Ничего, работает, кажется, не знаю. Вроде норм. Я, конечно, этому удохался тут с игрой. Потому что у меня монитор один. Чат там в полноэкранном режиме как бы чат не запускался. Ну, в смысле, запускался, конечно, но его видно не было. Игра 2013 года, как бы, понимаю. Сейчас будем это из АБС читать, не шучу. Нормально будет. Я надеюсь, звук нормальный, потому что как бы дедовская игра, ее можно, в принципе... Как бы тут звук можно отрегулировать только в микшере. Сейчас погромче можешь сделать. Так, ну то, что это фикшн, мы понимаем, я надеюсь. О. Игра называется в переводе «Полночь, полночь, в которую цветут красные паучьи лилии», что-то такое. Ну, ликорис, короче. A man exits a bathroom stall and leaves a lone girl behind him. As for the girl's appearance, you described the word. It was strange. She wore socks and indoor slippers. If we suppose this is a school, then there's nothing strange about that. On her back, she was wearing a red backpack. If we suppose this is a school, then there's nothing strange about that. And she was wearing a bra and panties. There was nothing strange about the girl wearing underwear in itself. However, for there to be a girl in her underwear in a bathroom stall, that was strange. For her to wear her backpack while in her underwear, what was strange? And for a girl and a man to be alone in a bathroom stall, that was strange. Even if we imagined what kind of unseemly things could have happened there. Even if we imagine what kind of unseemly things could have happened here, they couldn't have been described as anything but strange. As the echoes of the man's footsteps began to fade away, the girl remembered she was helplessly forgotten alone in her former school building. As she sank to the floor, she began to shed her tears while sobbing. Я не уверен, что такое место беса. Возможно, это звучало. Возможно, нам объяснять сейчас. Ну, нам покажут опенинг, тоже нормально. Звук, что ли, выкрутить?
私たちは美しいまま踊ろうよ線の月閉ざされた目をえぐるようにほのかにねあなたいざない落ちて笑う私
Новелла, кстати, про антибуллинг. Не шучу. Насколько я слышал. Glossary have been unlocked and is now available. Хорошо, у нас глоссарий есть. There are large numbers of students in this school. Girls make up half of the crowd. And so, perhaps, it's no longer appropriate to keep calling the girl in our story the girl. Also, if we can tear into her privacy and dignity to satisfy our own curiosity, then her name can easily be revealed here as well. The girl's name is Mari Moria, an unknown year student in the 8th class. She was a kind-hearted girl who worked as a member of the animal raising committee. Her grades were average. She wasn't strong in any subject. PE was her weakest. Что такое PE? Я не уверен, что такое PE. Если, короче, какие-то со звуком проблемы, там погромче или потише напишите, потому что я плохо в ВБС понимаю. It could have been said that she was even somewhat below average. Looking at her background, Marie has assumed many class managerial positions such as committee member and team leader. Unfortunately, it's not as if she had any ambition to attain them. Rather, others forced the positions onto her, and she didn't have the strength to refuse them. There are times when she had thoughts of saying farewell to her weaker self, and yet, if she had been able to change herself by thought alone, no one would have had to suffer. And so, without love for herself, Marie headed down the dark alley called today. For how long had Marie been forced to the things she didn't want to do? And what kind of shameless deeds were she being forced to do? As for that, there is no need to explain it in detail. The girl did things she didn't want to do and continued being humiliated. That's the simplest way to describe her current circumstances. How had she strayed into the set fate? One might muse about the excuses for why she was so meager and worthless. She had no choice but to be like that. There was no other way, no way to refuse it. That it was always for the best. Nonetheless, these reasons didn't help her situation one bit. Waiting something in order to make up for one weakness is to invite another weakness, and payment to make it up for that weakness again results in the search for another, something to compensate. Интересно. Ну хорошо. Ну, короче, в принципе, можно и так, конечно, интерпретировать, но я не уверен, что я с этим согласен, ну ладно. It seemed like an ant-lion pit, a spiral of malice without end. Already many of Marie's weaknesses had been gripped by a man, and she couldn't put into words her refusal to do the many shameless things he asked of her. For Marie, she didn't have any friends she could ask for help with this kind of problem. She had family, but there wasn't anyone she could trust if she spoke her mind. There were 3 children in the Murray family, but Marie's sisters were far more talented. Since Marie was always on the bottom rung, even just by being alive day by day, she had her sister's superiority and her own incapabilities thrust upon her. Eventually, Marie became civil, and soon she became alone at school and at home. In her distress, if she were to ask for help, she feared she would doubtlessly be compared to the greatness of her sisters and suffer for it. And so, then she was dropped onto this ant-lion pit. Я не уверен, что за животное ant-lion, это типа муравьедка, что ли? Возможно. Ну, короче, будем считать, что это такая своеобразная кроличья нора. Marie couldn't think of anyone in her family to ask for help. To her, what she thought was for the best was constantly backfiring and backfiring. To her, a girl who couldn't even refuse joining the animal raising committee, then pressed, how could she escape this malicious trap? And so in other words, this was basically, even though it's very, very pitiful for her, a natural consequence. Ну, получается, что так, как бы. И на пустом же месте это все произошло. Marie slowly puts on her clothes and once again dons her backpack, and with its weight she was reminded of them many disgraceful things she was forced to do mere moments ago, and so for Marie, from the moment she adorned the backpack, she felt as though she was being controlled by that man. Why did it have to turn out like this? In this oxygen-deprived air, I idly thought to myself that even if there was a goldfish that could swim in midair, ну хорошо. Конечно, перевод интересный. Но я боюсь себе представить, что там на японском вообще написано, что они так перевели. It would have no choice but to stick its head in the water to breathe. It was my fault from the very beginning. I went and did something I wasn't supposed to, and Sensei found out and blamed me for it. That was something very, very wrong. And if my classmates found out, there's no mistake I would surely be bullied again. It was that kind of thing. So then Sensei said it was alright to keep it a secret. I felt very grateful to Sensei. No matter what kind of strange things he might have wanted in return. I've been bullied for a very long time. For now I'm happy that I'm no longer being picked on, but that's only because my class has found someone else more worthy bullying than me. And so I thought any kind of compensation would rather be easier than returning to being the scapegoat once again. Because the role of the scapegoat was a painful one. And so, from the beginning I was willing to endure whatever he wanted. If I were to compare it to the sorrow and fear of being bullied in class, listening to Sensei's words weren't hard at all. Aside from calling me after school, it's not like Sensei ever teases me, Instead, he goes so far as to punish the classmates who do tease me. Yes, even though Sensei forced me to disgrace myself, he was protecting me. Ой, ну начался, короче, это... Какой-то... Виктимизация какая-то началась. Я не знаю, даже оправдание, как стокгольмский синдром какой-то. And so in return for protecting me, I have begun to think it's my duty to give Sensei whatever he wants, and I endure it. Feeling guilty about what Sensei wants is my problem, while Sensei himself is always very satisfied with them and even compliments me. So I've come to endure thinking that what I'm doing is good, but I don't know how to stop this. His desires. The deeds I should have offered up in gratitude to Sensei for protecting me are now becoming an obligation I must perform for him. Ты кому лайт? А, ну привет. Ладно, я аж сбился. Ладно, заново. The deeds I should have offered up in gratitude to Sensei for protecting me are now becoming an obligation I must perform for him. The occasional after-school relationship gradually began to erode into other times as well. The followers. Ну потом поставлю, хорошо. Сейчас я не буду этим заниматься. Короче, Лайт, мы читаем новеллу про антибуллинг. He'll do things like order me to feign illness so he can take me away during class, or order me to come to school on days off. Until now, school life has been secondary. Now that Sensei wants me on weekends and weekdays and weekends, I must do his bidding, and it's exhausting me. Ну, я понимаю, но я просто... Я, короче, эту кнопку минут 5 буду искать, понимаешь? Хорошие геройчики. Why am I so dedicated to doing these things? These tolls that I've come to endure to protect my tranquil school life. As they begin to violate that very tranquility, I'm starting to believe they no longer serve their purpose. However, there's no doubt Sensei helps protect me from those bullies. Ну, короче, я что думаю? Я не знаю, у нее... У девочки, конечно, биполярность сразу видно. Да. Не, ну тут такие вайфы, что, ну... Я не думаю, ковбой меня опять осуждать будет. Короче, тут даже ковбой вайф не найдет, я думаю. Like today, a bunch of boys wanted to pull a rank with my textbook were all lined up out in the hall for me. And he smacked them with an open palm until they were red all over. Чисто гачи от учителя. Ну, песня Саи, это, конечно, ты да. Там кринж, конечно, я так скажу. He even made them apologize to me. So I can't think of Sensei as a bad person. Rather, Sensei is a good teacher who helps protect me from the bullies. And so, hidden Sensei's desires is the natural way of showing my gratitude for that. On the other hand, feeling uncomfortable means that I'm starting to lose that appreciation. Is Sensei a good person or a bad person? I don't even know that anymore. Just today, I did it exactly as he said. Sensei ordered me to put on a backpack while in my underwear. Что? Что осторожно? His orders seemed as if he wanted me to thank him for his day's work. Нет, тут ничего такого не будет, я надеюсь. And it hurt because I didn't feel thankful. If Sensei didn't protect me, I would probably be bullied in class right now. Compared to that, this is okay, even though I thought that way. I couldn't stop myself from continuing to cry and sob. Я до сих пор не понимаю, что такое мясо-мясо. Да, мясо. Но мясо-мясо это вот как раз в песне Саи, если ты помнишь. If only the victim's name revealed, the injustice of leaving the culprit's name undisclosed is something only done in newspapers. Да, охуенные художники. So here, the name of the man who forced Maria's unreasonable destiny upon her shall be revealed. What? Justice. Не знаю, как это прочитать, короче. Just as divulged in the girl's monologue, this man is Marie's homeroom teacher. His name is Yoshimito Kanamori. Young, with a slender figure even in his calm composure, he hadn't lost his humor. He was a popular teacher who many girls longed for. Етить у него кринж, конечно, фейс. But that was just a matter of his appearance. On the inside, he crushed the meager desires of this girl's underfoot, and he had plenty of them. He was the worst. Well, he once had his sights on a scared position and might have been a virtuous man. But the pressure of the real world dispersed his unrealistic dreams. Before long, coupled with the pressure of work and unrewarding days, he began to embrace an irrational anger. Even though he selflessly devoted himself to his work, no one was grateful to him for it. All he had was the trickling of his own meaningless sweat. And yet, there were a lot of people in this world who would stand on his shoulders. And sip the delicious sweat. Етить тут, конечно, биполярочь на экране происходит. Ну окей, ничего. He was already seeing his efforts being rewarded and continued to pile up his hard work. But on the other hand, during times when no one rewarded him, he had to reward himself. Because if he thought about his work up until now, this kind of deviation was justified, and so he began to reinforce his selfish reasoning. And that could only be his unconscious rage. If he hadn't found an outlet for that rage in another person, he might have continued to be a noble teacher. But he found that person. Not only that, but she also one of his own students. So from that point forward, his life lost its purity, and he unmistakably became the worst kind of man. His purpose now, when he came to school, was not to educate the next generation of girls and boys to bear the future of society. but to assume his unrequited self by consciously violating the girls to his heart's content. And that was just the starting point of Kanamori's conscious sense. He had a weakness. No matter how much he suppressed it, his desires could not be contained from unleashing his pleasure, and that pleasure didn't need long to take the guilt away from him. The listless mornings of meeting knew no end and went on and on. Complaints from parents about the quality and differences in each class report cards. Complaints about the harsh rule of not being able to use towels at the school's pool due to the spread of skin disease. Бля, ну хоть не вши. Вот я в одной школе, где вши был, там типа эти все кирпичи ронял, конечно. Но у них там жесткая антисанитария была, так скажу. Until as recently as last year, there was an insistent and tenaciously repetitious, wise principle. Я не буду делать вид, как будто я знаю, что это за слово. Сейчас загуглю просто. Цепка. Ну хорошо. Ну, цепка настойчивый, повторяющийся, жестко. Блин, ну это, конечно, понять можно, но перевести именно, мне кажется, будет сложно. Да. Да, в Google переводчике просто это перевести весь текст нормально будет. И обратно на английский перегнать. Ну, principle это, по-моему, то ли зауч, то ли что-то такое, короче. Ну, короче, строгий зауч, так скажем. Настойчивый. И цепкий. Who patterned airs and obsessively went around making declarations as if he owned the staff room. Ну, может и есть. During those times, my heart wanted the school day to quickly end so I could call Marie to the usual former school building bathroom. Чисто спидранит, да не до толчка. And then I could greatly satisfy my twisted fantasies, because she could become whatever kind of outlet I desired. The pool opening began, and the school-appointed dark blue swimsuits became dazzling miracles. О, это, короче, тот чел из Азуманги Дайо, который который к бассейну лез. I think I'm just all tired of the underwear and backpack combination. Perhaps this time I'll make her wear that backpack with a skull swimsuit. Я осуждаю. Осуждаю. No doubt it'll be a laughable stupid look for her, like no one has ever seen. Блин, он... Так вот... ну он из садистских соображений это делает, я так понимаю, ну ладно. If I made her prepare for it, even that kind of ridiculous outfit could become a reality the next day, and the girl who could never refuse anyone would indulge in my fantasies. Но тут не совсем то, чтобы есть вообще... У Рюкиши, который написал эту игру, у него вообще не особо... Как бы главные персонажи есть, тут нет протагониста, понимаешь? Есть просто персонажи, которые чаще появляются или реже. Как-то так. Есть персонажи, от лица которых ведется повествование, но они, в принципе, тоже могут меняться там и так далее. To control one girl with just this kind of criminal conduct, I was able to imagine myself as having reached a complete level beyond anyone else in the staff room. Plenty of different philosophies have questioned how humans could elevate themselves. How could I elevate myself as a human? How could I be at ease without being looked down upon by others? These are things I had worried about in my younger days. But the solution tumbled right under my nose. To control someone and to stand above them. By only doing just that, I was able to conquer the complex that had vexed me since childhood. Бля. Ну, короче, понял я. Тяжелая у него, короче, травма, видимо. Not only that, I didn't feel like I was being looked down upon. On the contrary, when no students were around, I was immersed in the superiority I felt over my chit-chatting co-workers. Чисто доминатор. But at the same time, as for those theirs that should have completely disappeared, I was aware that some stayed in my mind. For today, tomorrow, and even the day after that, I'll probably continue to do as I please to that girl to my heart's content. And yet, for it to continue into next year, the year after that, and even 10 years from now is impossible. Marie Moria, not unlike other students, would soon change schools, graduate. The world she surrounds herself with will change, and before I know it, a time may come when she'll be beyond my control. At that time, it would be better if we could end it cleanly like a strange couple's sudden breakup, but expecting that was foolish. What I've come to force Marie to do is a completely excuseless crime. The girl who wants to be released from me always swears that she'll never tell anyone, but that's only while she's under my control and has nowhere to run. If her circumstances change, there's no doubt she'll immediately change that and report me to the police. For instance, how much longer can she remain obedient? People don't submit to the very depths of their souls. Until that day comes when they're released. They can only look to lessen their oppression. Someday Moria will surely betray me. Ну, короче, параноик, с какой-то травмой, садист, доминатор, какой-то мастермайнд. Короче, да, у него так нормально. Собрал бинго. Ну, кстати, типичный учитель, наверное, такой успешный. With that in mind, how could I keep this going for even just one more heart-melting day? And then, faced with the end of those days, how could they end peacefully? I began to ponder. The first thing I thought of was how I could extend my power over her after she graduated. How could I control her forever without betrayal? And it's not like our bodies can last forever either. If that's the case, assuming these days have to end, I must think of a way to make them end as quickly as possible. But what results would be a clean ending? Since there was no guarantee she would never betray me, could I end this so I trust her not to stab me in the back? After following this chain of logic, the resulting solution was exceedingly simple. The sensor was overflowing in countless movies, television programs, and the like. And so it instantly came to my mind. From this point forward in my mind, unknowingly, the idea began to bloom that Marie Moria must be killed. Понял. Ой. At least for now, Marie is obedient. having discord in her domestic environment, being unable to console her family, and being a bullied child from the beginning, she has no friends to ask for help in class.
Да, сам себя переиграл, получается.
Therefore, it's while she's bidding that I should put her away. I came to realize I had in the palm of my hand a moist and detestable sweat. Yes, this was the price. Price for the unforgivable sin of my role in one girl as the outlet of my desires. But the way to pay that price was through another sin, and my pile of sins reaches the height of inhumanity. Понял.
Ну он шиз, короче, мягко говоря. Ну как минимум, как бы это, психопат немножко.
But there are plenty of guys that are worse than I am. Until today, now, even after today, I'll continue to devote myself and I'll uphold my noble teaching profession better than anyone else. I'll energetically handle teaching homeroom, and as for club advisement and trouble with parents and the like, if someone complains, I'll handle everything and continue without reward. After all, if I think of all that I've achieved so far, putting aside a crime to this degree, I still can be considered a bad guy. In this world, the guys who have done well can do as they want, and guys who can't end up always getting used until they drop dead. That's just it. Am I not?
Чисто это, прочитал Ницше, с ума сошел, я не знаю. Что-то такое. Мужик свихнулся на доминаторстве.
Am I not just teaching the girl who aptly fits my reasoning, Marie Moria, the special lesson, and the guys who don't notice can only spend their lives being controlled by someone? It's natural for them to continue being exploited. Anyway, Marie is still obedient. I'm always calling her to the old building's restroom unnoticed. Perhaps I could change where we meet. I wonder if there might be a way to ask her to go somewhere unnoticed, where there'd be no evidence, and absolutely without exposing myself finally kill her. I'll think it over. I have to come up with a foolproof plan, although it's not as though I have to rush my plan out by today or tomorrow, because at least for today and the days after, Marie should have no way to escape from my control. What kind of pleasure shall I indulge in today? Again, hallowed my mind to fill with perverted fantasies, and until the long speech by the wise principal ended at first bow for a long time, those fantasies continued.
Я, кстати, не понимаю, он типа только с ней это применительно нее как бы подобные нехорошие вещи совершал, или просто у меня такое чувство, что даже если он ее убьет, как бы он еще одну найдет потом. Ну, короче, интересная у него логика, так скажем.
They say Mimesa's-san came out. They say Mimesa's son came out. They said they heard it crying, Mesa. This is the land of the skull's children, and as it can only be entered by children, often strange superstitions spread among them. Then walking through the halls, I suddenly heard that. Recently I've heard that name around as if it were a new skull's ghost. A skull yokai is just that.
Ну, я забыл сказать, тут еще будут йокаи. То есть это игра про... Про ночи в школьном толчке Йокаев вместе с маньяком я нормально объяснил? Примерно что-то такое.
A school yokai is just that. For example, if the science room skeleton starts to dance in the middle of the night, or if someone sees the movie Nice of the music's room with Holland statue, schools everywhere have them, and without a better alternative, they are often introduced in school ghost stories. There are also stories like School's Seven Mysteries. I don't really know what kind of yokai make up the seven mysteries at this school, but at any rate it seems like I've just heard about them. It looks like the children are talking about a yokai called Meso-Meso-san. As its name implies, it seems like it's a yokai that cries Meso-Meso. It was a truly childish and simplistic naming. When I moved to hurry past them, that thought of how stupid it was, I stopped suddenly in my tracks, because then I heard them say this. Yeah, that Meso-Meso-san, right? Apparently it comes out of the old school's building girl's bathroom, and then inside the stall it cries Meso-Meso.
If you think it might be somebody crying
and knock on the door, you'll start to hear it from inside.
Понял.
Meso-Meso, Meso-Meso, you out there, please listen to my pitiful story. Without knowing it, a shiver began to creep up my spine. The Meso-Meso-san the students were talking about wasn't a yokai or anything of the sort, because it might have really existed. In the old school building's restroom, someone had been crying, and then someone asked what was wrong. They answered, "Please listen to my pitiful story." I swallowed hard and felt as if needles of ice were driving me to desperation. Подожди.
Сейчас, надо подумать, это как вообще. Как могут ледяные иглы доводить до отчаяния? Ну, я, конечно... Ну, хорошо, допустим.
That wasn't some kind of yokai. Marie. It must have been Maria. If someone were to see us together there, we might be under some futile suspicion, like always after we'd end our after school rendezvous. I'd leave first, and she would probably leave sometime afterwards. Basically, after I leave, Marie is left alone in the toilet stall. From there, on some off chance, a student or someone went and entered the old school building. If they then to hear the girl crying inside the stall, Marie would doubtlessly want to tell them her story. Even so, the student who went there thought it was a yokai and must have run away. This is quite a coincidence, or perhaps a miracle. Without knowing it, I have avoided a deadly crisis. If this student hadn't thought it was a yokai and had lent an ear to Marie's story, there's no doubt that right about now, I'd be in a jail cell. But even if that miraculous coincidence, I couldn't stop my cold sweat.
Чисто чел, конечно, да.
Right. But they say if you listen to Meso-Meso-san, you must not speak to it. Well, if you do speak to Meso-Meso-san, and if you say its true form after opening the door, sure, then it gets gruesome. Gruesome?
Boy. They say you'll be dragged into the stall, and after breaking every bone in your body, it will kill you. Понял. Нормально. And so they say, don't speak with it, and don't look at it. Scary, scary, scary. Yeah, but people don't normally go to the old buildings' bathrooms, so this is just a good story to get people to go near Mrs. Sun's stall, isn't it? They'd say you better not go there, don't go there. But then obviously they'll go, and if Mrs. Sun was really there in that stall, now that would be scary. Так, что-то сам себя рассмешил. Without thinking, I was barely able to contain myself from bursting into laughter while listening to that conversation. Someone who had heard Marie Moria's cries made it... Да ё-моё. Так, воды попил, вроде полегче. Someone who had heard Marie Moria's cries made a ghost story. Up until that point, this had been a dangerous miscalculation, but I would never in my dreams have imagined for them to advise against going near that stall. Marie's cries that wanted salvation ironically backfired and drove students away from her. The girls are superstitious, and naturally they wouldn't imitate this sort of transgression. On the other hand, the boys will really like this idea. However, no matter what kind of reason they might have, the girls' bathroom is such a forbidden place for the prepubescent boys that if they were to set foot in it, they would be accosted for it. In other words, Mrs. Sun's ghost story, now more than ever, has driven people away from that bathroom. No, that's probably too optimistic. While almost all of the students might be scared by the ghost story, the school is just too big. There must be at least one student who isn't afraid. And speaking of that person, if he were to tell the students our secrets, it would mean my ruin. I must have realized the strain of the situation coming back once again. I told Marie to come to the usual old school building's bathroom after school today as well. And lastly, it might be best if I monitored the situation a bit. I should at least take the time to see what kind of blind spots exist in the halls that cross the old school building's bathroom. If I'm really discreet... Дискретный учитель. If I'm really discreet, today should be my farewell rendezvous with Marie, and yet my stupid male nature. I intended to make Marie my slave. In reality, I'm becoming hers. Every day is already unbearable, painful for me, so forcing Marie to help heal that pain at the end of each day had become to the point where I was unable to resist even a single day without her. Although I make Marie call me her master like a pet, in reality I was the one being mastered. For Marie, a day I didn't call for her was probably a day of rest, but for me, because I didn't summon her, I would suffer that from a pain that went unhealed. And so, while feeling a pressing conscience,
Что такое conscience? А, совесть, типа. Понял. Ну, как обычно, Фаермун не знает, как бы, английского аналога слова совесть по понятным причинам. And so, while feeling a pressing conscience to not invite her to that bathroom, I also held the contradiction that I didn't want to cancel today's invitation. How will I violate her today that occupied my thoughts since this morning? If I were to postpone it, there'd be no doubt what would happen to my mind. And so, aware of the dangers, I called upon Marie again today. Before long, I won't be able to call her up anymore. I'll absolutely enjoy her to my heart's content and now make today last forever and forever and ever. Понял. Marie, I love you. You and your body, even to the point of madness. I'm in love with it all. Marie. Не, у меня хорошо получается озвучивать, мне кажется, смех. Of course, Mimesa-san's story even reached Marie's ears. Mimesa-san's story had become the hot topic of the rumor-loving girls of Marie's class 8. How creepy. I don't go to the old school bathroom solid, but now I really don't want to see it. But it's scary. Even if it wasn't in the old school building, if I were to knock on the closed stall door and from the inside heard meso, I'd freak out. What would you do? Let's say you knocked, and it said something like, meso, you there, listen to my pitiful story. No. Run away. Just by replying like that, it'd probably kill you by crushing every bone in your body, right? No. While listening to this, Marie was feeling sad. Why doesn't anyone listen to the sorrows of the person inside? Marie also realized that it was probably about her. She didn't remember it well, but earlier she was forced to do something horrible that she had never done before. It was hard for her, painful, and after she had been released, she couldn't hold back the tears. At that time, someone came to the bathroom. She wanted them to help save her from her terrible sadness, and she had a feeling that she had said something like that. And so, like it's said in the ghost story, that someone on the other side of the door ran away, and that incident suddenly became a ghost story, and she was also suddenly made out to be a yokai called Mesa-san, even if she wanted to be saved by someone. If they asked her story, they would be killed by having all the bones in their bodies crushed, so no one would dare ask. It was sad. Having her sole act of courage turned into the work of a yokai by someone's story left her feeling downhearted. But she thought being a yokai might not have been bad, because she didn't know that those nightmarish days would end. Marie's heart had already become like ash. Okay. Recently, while waiting for the apartment elevator, she looked down below her, and despite being on the 8th floor, she had a pleasant feeling that the waste asphalt must have been very soft. Понял. Ну, я не знаю, с восьмого такое, конечно. For someone who felt family, school, and a place in the world who no longer knew what tomorrow would bring, could the asphalt truly and kindly bring it all to an end? And so she thought. But death is just a simple escape. Naturally, admitting defeat couldn't settle it. If I do, then at least I want revenge against that teacher who toys with me. And yet, in my weakness, what can I do to hurt him? I know that all of what Sensei forces me to do is wrong. If I have the resolve to destroy myself, I can expose everything and I will surely take Sensei down with me. Sensei recorded home videos of the many acts he forced me to do for him. Ruh. And he said if betrayed him, he'd distribute them. Oh no. If I have the resolve to ruin myself, I can take Sensei along with me. But after ruining myself, probably even just by being alive, many painful days of shame would await me. Between that kind of war and desire for revenge, I thought plenty about both results. If I can't escape no matter how I try, all that's left is suicide. But if there's another way, I don't want to die. Can I have my revenge without dying? There's no way such a convenient method could exist. If I want to live without any sort of revenge, then today after school, at the appointed time, I have no choice but to wait for Sensei in that buff room. Then I thought, I really should become the yokai Mesa-san then. Mesa-san is a terrifying yokai, and it's said that it drugs in its victims and kills them by crushing all their bones with its horrific power. If I could attain that power, then surely I could even have my revenge on that man. That man always dressed me like chewing gum. He chews until the flavor is gone, and finally he spits me out and throws me away. He puts on his clothes, tells me to go home, and he leaves me. But if I had Mesa-san's power, then I would also chew, and after I ground his bones into dust, I'd spit him out. And so I wanted to become a yokai and cease being human. And to stop being human isn't that much different than killing myself. But it wasn't that. I simply wanted to stop being human. There was a big difference because I wanted to be reborn into something else to take my revenge. Lately, I've come to understand that's all that's left for me. School illustrates life. For humans who are bullied in school even after they enter society, things don't change. They just take on the same role again. While in school, humans can break away from the bullies, become unable to escape them for the rest of their lives. And I'm a human who can break free. Because even if I were to continue living like this, nothing good would come of it. Even if I entered society, I'd be captured by another man like Sensei, and I'd be fated to return to those days once again, unable to break free. While I understood that much, I didn't have the courage to simply choose death. After all, becoming a yokai, wanting revenge and like... Was there strange ideas and I couldn't tell if they were positive or negative. I wonder, could I become a Nessa-san? I wonder, could I join the ranks of the school yokai? I was truly the Nessa-san that everyone was gossiping about, but I wasn't like that yokai everyone was talking about. Even though I'm a Nessa-san, I wonder, how could I really become a Nessa-san? As Marie idly wondered that question, absent-mindedly wasted time in the library while waiting for the appointment time after school. She must have been talking to herself in a whisper. Even if there were no people listening, her voice must have been too quiet to warrant us asking if she had said something. Even so, since that whisper received a reply, Marie couldn't help but be surprised. So you're saying
You're Mimesa-san. Eh? What's that? Suddenly, there was a girl in front of Marie. Of course, the girl was someone Marie didn't know. There were more that... Как я ненавижу это. Эту последовательность слов. There were more than 8-10 classes for each grade in this mammoth school. Exchanges and transfers of students were common, even if they were in the same grade. Сука. Бля. Меня всегда вот в переводах от Рюкиши, я не знаю, я каждый раз читая это, я чувствую боль. Вот чисто это словосочетание. Even if they were in the same grade, there were many children she didn't know. The girl looked very refined. That is to say, extravagant. As if she were at a piano recital, the girl had a pristine and elegant figure. She looked like a doll wearing a beautiful dress that had turned into a human being. Of course, the same could be said for her face and hair. It was obvious that properly maintaining them must have taken a lot of time, but even the look in her eyes was like a doll's. They were very beautiful, like jewels. Even so, she couldn't sense warm blood flowing through them. Her hair and outfit, among other things, could be complimented for being doll-like, but as for her eyes, saying they were doll-like might not have been a compliment. By the look in this girl's eyes, Marie was left with that kind of impression. Could this girl be in the same grade or in a grade above? If the girl were an upperclassman, Marie had to watch her language, because Marie at least wanted to know what grade she was in. She looked at the name tag of the girl in front of her, but it couldn't be made out, as if the name tag had been blotted out by the rain. Never mind my name tag, I want to see yours. Show it to me. I'm sorry. Marie's arms had hidden her name tag, so the girl hadn't been able to see it. And since she had been caught picking at her name tag, Marie hurried to show her own. A kid from class 8, huh? The school has so many students, so I can't really say I'm familiar with that class. The girl seemed satisfied to know that Marie was a student in class 8. But for Marie, the girl's name tag was obscured, and she couldn't read it well. Despite the girl's elegant clothing, with her school regulation name tag in an unseemable spot, Marie felt a strange humor to it all. Marie strained her eyes as best as she could and read only the class, but something was strange about that too, because she had read class B, even though there shouldn't be any classes named alphabetically. The name tag had this school's format. Thinking it would be rude to stare any more beyond that, Marie stopped looking at her name tag. Marie Moria-san. The names of children these days are getting harder to read, but they can't beat my name. Call me Higanbana, alright? Nice to meet you, Marie? Yes. Oh, very nice to meet you. You'll call Higanbana, but could it be her first name or last name? Marie couldn't decide, but as far as talking to her one-on-one, there is no need to call her by her first name. Marie also thought there was probably no need to pointlessly remember that name. And then the girl named Higanbana giggled. It might have been because she saw through Marie's doubts about her name. Thinking there was no way she could have sensed something like that, Marie shivered ever so slightly. Well, about what you just said, are you Mimesa-san? Or not? Well, that's... Marie didn't really know what would be the correct reply. After all, because she was the cause of the ghost story, with that in mind, there was no doubt she was Mimesa-san. But Marie wasn't like the yokai the students were spreading rumors about. And so Marie, not knowing how best to respond, must have perplexed for a time. Higanbana giggled, watching Marie's bewilderment. It was as if she understood, even without Marie saying a word. There are a lot of children gathering here at a school this big. Did you know? Yokai gathered the hearts of people, so if there's a school with this many students crowding about, then more yokai would gather than at a normal school. You know, don't you? The school's 7 mysteries, the 7 yokai that reside in this school, having 7 seats would have been plenty for a normal school. But for a school this big, don't you think that'd be room for more than 7? So there's been talk about increasing the number of seats for yokai in this school. Fittingly, there's been talk about a yokai called Mimesa-san. I've been searching, thinking what kind of child it could be, but I'm surprised. Now that I've finally found it, I think it was a human. Well, I'm not a yokai, that's... But you're Mimesa-san, right? I don't think it matters that you're human. Among the 7 mysteries, it seems there are also former humans as well. I'm different, however. As if she were a beautiful doll surrounded by elegant furniture, Higanbana laughed with a giggle. And yes, at the same time, with the eeriness of a doll that shouldn't move, she giggled. Marie certainly wasn't in a dream world, but she knew there was no doubt that Higanbana wasn't human, and she had come to choose a suitable new companion, the new yokai Mimesa-san. There was no doubt. Higanbana-san, are you a yokai? Yeah. In class I'm called the dancing Higanbana, the 3rd rank of the 7 seats. Once in a while, I'm mentioned by a nurse as well. A doll who, for some reason, had been left in the infirmary. Have you heard the tale about it dancing alone in the depth of the night? I'm sorry. I don't really know that story. I see. Well, thanks for humoring me. That was the first time Higanbana's expression dimmed as she frowned. It seemed that having Marie not know her name made Higanbana uncomfortable. But looking at the expression, Marie finally realized that she could talk to her. What kind of person was the girl who introduced herself as one of the 7 mysteries? While it was difficult for her to understand, she didn't seem like a bad person. Higanbana-san, what have you come for? Is it to welcome Mimesa-san as one of you? Marie timidly asked, even though she was strangely called herself a yokai. For her to welcome Marie, who had no friends, into their fold truly made Marie feel a little happy. To become one of the yokai, that meant ending her life as a human. If so, would this yokai called Higanbana kill her here outright with a spell? But that was just a wishful thinking. If she didn't even have the courage to take her own life, the days of being that man's plaything would continue without end. She thought it'd be much better to be killed with a spell right here, so she could be welcomed as one of Higanbana's kind. So you're prepared to give up being a human then? Yes. Higanbana grinned. and she evaluated Marie by looking her over from the top of her head to the tips of her toes. Around this time, Marie had no doubt. Higanbana had the power to wordlessly read her mind, and after thinking it, Higanbana, as if to reply, of course, grinned once again. Well, there's no problem with the will to do it. Oh, suitable. I'll recommend it at our class meeting that you join us as the 8th rank as Mesa-san. I think it'll probably be easily decided. After all, everyone's pleased with Mesa-san. Higanbana loved this, as if she were in a good mood. But in a blink, even though Marie could still hear her laughter, Higanbana's figure disappeared. With another blink, this time her voice disappeared, and with a final blink, her very presence dissipated away. And so it happened before she could react. Marie frantically searched for Higanbana, but she didn't find her again. Since she disappeared, she understood that Higanbana wasn't human. She felt happiness knowing that she had been invited to be a part of that kind of existence. But since she disappeared, what was the terrifying thought that everything that happened just now might have all been a daydream? Wanting to wipe that thought from her mind, she searches for Higanbana, but she can't find her because as much as she wanted the yokai's form across from her room, she couldn't be seen through human eyes. Was what just happened real? Or could it have been a desired escape in a momentary daydream? I, Marie, will believe in Higanbana's existence. There is no way that this vivid experience just now was an illusion. I will accept this invitation from the school yokai. By ending my humanity, I finally found a way to escape from my days of suffering. Surely I attain the power I need to take my revenge on Sensei if I rid myself of this human life. But I also understood this cursing. But I also understood that cursing someone digs two graves. If I'm not prepared to lose everything, I can't have my revenge. Ну хорошо. Здравствуйте. Он рычит как бы. The resolution to cease human being, the resolution to throw away all her life up until today, and then she realized that there was a spark of emotion in Marie's heart. But before she could realize what that emotion was, the needle on the clock signaled that it was time for her to head to the old school building bathroom. And once again she was expressionless, returning to an expression paler than Higanbana's doll-like figure. She trudged towards the old school building. She wondered what kind of emotion it was that had set her heart on fire. That emotion's name, resolution, or perhaps it was determination. She had told Higanbana what she was prepared to cease being human. After that, all she could do was wait for Minato-san's existence to be recognized at the yokai school meeting. If I were recognized by them, I might be welcome to live as a yokai in the school. I'll likely lose myself, and I'll probably have to go through a rite of passage to end my life as a human. In other words, I will soon end my human life. If that's so, since I have nothing left to lose, wouldn't it be alright if I could try just one act of bravery while I've still got my human body? Marie headed for the old school building, offering with your head down. But endless clenched fist of hers, she held just a tiny bit of strength. Ща, это... Перерыв, это минуты 2. Ну, я, кстати, это не понял, как это... Сейчас плюс суши, наверное, были, но не важно. Я не понял, как вообще антипатия или как там, это проклинание другого человека, это копает две могилы, потому что ну, это уже толстовство какое-то, я не знаю. Ну, реально, как бы. Ну, в принципе, ну это реально какой-то либо крайний пацифизм, либо толстовство. Sensei, I'd like to speak with you. Then Murray began to talk like that. Kanamori instinctively knew. His forbidden relationship with her couldn't continue forever. The day will come, then it will end somehow. And he knew that day had finally arrived, because Murray wanted to end their relationship today, and as he heard her awkward tone, before he had finished listening, he understood everything. But in spite of knowing that a day like today would eventually arrive, he hadn't thought that it actually would be today, and Kanamori was considerably flustered. While he knew that this day would finally arrive, it was clear he hadn't thought of any way to stop it. Are you sure you want to say that? Even though I have videos of you and are you sure you want someone to see those embarrassing videos? I don't want someone to see them, but if someone does, I think Sensei would be in trouble too. Although he had exhausted the utmost cruelty upon her, Kanamori was a teacher who cultivated a large number of students under his observing eye, and so, looking at Marie's expression, he was convinced Marie had the courage to speak the words that would end it. Moreover, while putting it into words, she was gaining more and more courage in what she had to say. This was bad. The more he was trying to calm her down, the more stubborn she would get instead. But for Marie, who had been that shy and submissive, why did she suddenly have this much courage? It couldn't be. Had she told someone and asked for help, that would be the end of me. The risk of those days leading to lives. Leading. Уверена, что это? По-моему, это ошибка в переводе, кстати. Потому что вот не Ну, не вел 2 жизни, а жил их, наверное, нет? Не знаю, по-моему, это ошибка. The risk of those days, leading 2 lives, I should have known the risks more than anyone. But I had forgotten the riskiness by overindulging in those days of pleasure. I had presumed that by using a tape as blackmail I could make her surrender. The recordings of the deeds I forced Marie to do naturally didn't just obtain as insurance. They were the only thing that satisfied my own base desires. But conventionally, it became a control to prevent betrayal from her. Tape recordings of the acts became a threat, one that was useful for Marie's particular stereotype, but most tape recordings that threatened her like a gigantic dominating fortress were quickly negated, and the shackles that now held Marie under my control were beginning to fade away from existence. Did you talk to anyone about this or something? No. I still haven't told anyone. If you prefer to tell someone since you know, let's say, I don't want that. But well, if Sensei were to destroy those tapes, I wouldn't tell anyone. Then Marie felt slight relief. Marie still hadn't told anyone. My destruction hadn't arrived yet. It's still not too late, I could still find another way. Until Marie's become stronger, tape recordings were her Achilles' heel. After all, she was using them as an equal condition in exchange for not telling anyone. But even so, couldn't Marie keep her mouth shut forever? It's fine now, because she's still afraid of me. It's fine as long as she's just thinking that we're on equal ground. But supposing she gets more courage, if she thought to turn me onto the police, I have nothing to protect myself from that. In the blink of an eye, the police would arrest me, and they'd be decided that Heracles' heel the tapes wouldn't be distributed. First of all, whenever I threatened her, I always keep saying, I'll broadcast the tapes. How much time will that really buy me? It's pointless. This isn't as simple as a hidden switchblade concealed in her pocket that would bring my ruin with a single strike. Compared to that, running to the police is far simpler. Thankfully, Marie believes that we're on equal ground for now. If she realizes the overwhelming differences, that will quickly be the tiebreaker. In addition to that, none of my efforts could protect me. Basically, that balance is already being torn apart. It's just that Marie hasn't noticed it. Today she can deceive me by pretending to consent in this place. But tonight she might phone the police. It's too late because my control no longer reaches Marie. Yes. Then she leaves my side, it's over. It's not strange that she's already bearing her thanks. Even so, Marie still hasn't entirely realized her circumstances. Ну, она так, как видите, как бы еще и не очень умная, в принципе. Ну или травмированная, по крайней мере, не знаю. What a stupid brat. Есть такое. That kind of thick-headed stupidity was the capacity of this bullet checked after all. That kind of stupidity stacked next to my great work until now, my prestigious high school, my prestigious university, and continuing on as a teacher, and before long, vice principal, and I could go on to become headmaster as if she could, even follow in my footsteps. I feel a mindless fury burning in my guts. Anyway,
If I don't somehow settle this right here and now, I'll destroy myself even before tomorrow morning. Now, while Marie is in my side like this. Now, while we're alone in this bathroom stall like this. Now, while we're in the abandoned former school building, I must do something. If it comes to that, the answer is too easy. And as soon as I had the answer in my mind, the act was carried out by my hands. Помянем.
Ну это как бы это... Я так понимаю, что это как бы ритуал вознесения в Юкай такое. Специфическое такое, я не знаю. Не то что... Ну это как бы... Это, конечно, самопожертвование, но самопожертвование, о котором она, в принципе, особо и не думала. То есть это непроизвольное, так скажем, самопожертвование от нее. Забавно довольно. The rest, a strange sight. My vision blurred and I felt as if I was in the world beyond the raging water's surface. It wasn't just my vision, it was my hearing too, and even my sense of touch, as if under raging water, everything became sluggish and muffled. And from that river's edge, my hands dug in, crushing Marie's throat, and that was probably a memory from my childhood. A memory associated with chasing a carp by the brook with my bare hands. А карп — это что такое? Сазан, ну рыба, короче. Карп. Подожди, он рыбу задушил, что за бред? Наркоман, что ли? Это брук, это ручей вроде, да? Да. Ядрить он, короче, не очень, конечно.
Just what were the dreams I had back then? I saw myself as the Prime Minister. I wanted to be an airline pilot. How come those dreams turned out like this? Like this, even though. Then I ran around chasing carp and crayfish by the brook for the best days of my life. While Marie had convulsions, she intensely stared into space and thought nothing was in the air. All she could do was a foam and drool from her mouth if she began to hang. That's right, stopping Marie's breathing. Playing with and killing was carp and crayfish and the like. They all had this same kind of feeling. So basically, living creatures, humans, carp, and even crayfish. In the end, there's not much difference. Шизоид. No matter how much I strangled, it didn't happen. In order to crush her, or of course I gave it every last ounce of strength in my body, and so it happened. No. The resistance of the convulsing Marie, as if all of her anguish had melted away, slowly began to slacken, and in the end, she, exhausted, as if unable to support the weight of her own body. The hands that gripped Marie's neck felt the full weight of her body. Marie no longer moved, but it was obvious she was just pretending to stiffen my hands, because if I were to perchance loosen my grip... Это я тоже не знаю, что такое. А, случайно? Ну, хорошо. Quickly let go, she'd naturally obey the laws of gravity and tumble to the ground. Marie, with her neck to the wall, using the friction of the wall as if to show one final act of resistance, at last crouched to the ground. That was completely different than falling into a seated position. A person tends to sit so that their clothes aren't in disarray, but from that way Marie sat, I couldn't sense that at all. Her clothes were in disarray, and her skirt was immediately inside out, without even activating to fix her embarrassing state one bit. There sat Marie. No, the word said no longer fit. It was there that Marie had died.
Брух. Ну, короче, я думал, он готовиться будет, а он уже как бы... Я не знаю, типа, он довольно... Я не знаю, он типа накрутил себя за 20 минут и пошел убил. То есть к этому даже не... Не, ну, конечно, у него были причины, но вот именно серьезных последствий, как бы, для того, чтобы он это сделал, именно не было. Он просто это накрутил себя.
The sudden realization that he had committed murder began to nauseate him. But that wasn't horror and self-repulsion. As for what it was that, like vigorously opening a bag of peanuts and spilling the contents all over the carpet, while looking at that horrible spectacle. He seemed to grumble as if to say how annoying. Yes, it was particularly bothersome. Already when I killed her. There was no point in regretting it now. That said, I don't need to regret it. Marie is dead, and if I'm still living, from now on I can live my life without shame. And for that reason I have to hide Marie's corpse. But there, I can't think of anything right now. But if I can reclaim my composure, I'll be able to think about it as long as I like. And because it's not like I stabbed her with a knife, leaving any traces that stand out, it's also already late after school. The students have all disappeared. Since I'm a teacher and I'm busy with my own work, what goes on the school holds no interest for me, much less a murder in the old school building bathroom, because there's no way someone would suspect me of hiding the body somewhere. But then I finally realized I was taking deep breaths. Probably it seemed I wasn't as cold-blooded as I thought I was. Relax, there's no need to hurry. Relax, relax. At that moment, from the far side of the hall, I heard someone's footsteps drawing near. Because of the peculiar way they were walking, it was probably one of the students. But in the old school building at this hour, and even then, what kind of business did they have with this bathroom? That's right. It's certainly been rumored the Yoki called Mrs. Sun comes out of this bathroom. Most of the superstitious students won't go near it, but there's also curiosity among them. As much as one might threaten them not to go near a place, sure enough, there'll be at least one particularly curious bastard who will go there. The sound of those footsteps weren't coming at a brisk pace. I couldn't tell if it was someone walking very carefully and slowly. Что? Подожди. I could tell. Он мог, понял. I could tell it was someone walking very carefully and slowly, step by step, and I could even tell they were holding their breath, because I had clearly imagined this already. In order to put those rumors of that so-called yokai who comes from the stole Mimesa-san to the test, the time for the one person seeking to test their courage has finally come. If it is this student, will they come to his bathroom? Marie's corpse and I are in this bathroom stall, and the door is closed, so if they entered the bathroom, they instantly know that someone was in the bathroom stall. This is bad. This is bad. This is bad. If by chance they see Marie's body, or if someone knows I'm here at this time, I'm screwed. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? My whole body burst out in cold sweat. For myself, who didn't shed a single drop of sweat and killing Marie in cold blood, just a single gutsy student who showed up by chance that alone drove me into a panic. Yet, and even as I was panicking, the steps had steadily drawn closer to the bathroom, and now they had arrived. Tap, tap, tap. Those footsteps stopped at the entrance to the bathroom. Knowing that the stall's door was closed, I gulped. And maybe just by seeing it was closed, maybe it was truly empty at any rate. In order to confirm that thought, slowly, it stepped into the bathroom. Slowly, closer. What should I do? What should I do? Slowly, closer still. Please go back the way you came, please. Go back the way you came. Closer and closer, closer and closer. With seconds feeling like hours, time froze, and then a knock. They hit it, they knocked. A knock was a confirmation if someone was inside or not. If an answer doesn't come from in here, maybe they'll one day wonder why no one is inside and climb up to peek from above, or easier yet, they'd squat down and peek through the hole under the door. Either way, they'll realize the strangeness of there being more than one person inside. Then, if I don't return the knock, but if I do that, won't they just be interested that someone's inside? This is bad, this is bad, this is bad. I have no choice but to to show myself. Ah, damn it. If I don't go out that door, then I'll also have to silence this stupid gutsy student and send him after Marie. But two would be bad, and even though one might be tough, and if it killed two more, I have no confidence I could get away with that. And this Brett's friends might even be waiting outside for them to get back. A scream that couldn't have come from my mouth filled my chest. And in my empty mind, it made me feel as if a firework had sparked in the pure white mist. As if I were no longer myself, I felt I had escaped reality, and then faced with a door or die situation. Bold words even I couldn't imagine spilled from my mouth. Meso. That was my Meso-san's line. From the overside of the door, I certainly heard a primary schoolgirl scream with a hee that took her breath away. Meso. You there, please listen to my pitiful story. Pitifully. And I spoke while imagining as if Meso-san no, as Marie had said it. Feeble with a high pitch. The overside of the door was silent. Perhaps this third-rate performance was enough. As my impatience grew, the silence from the overside of the door was broken. It's here! That was undoubtedly the primary schoolgirl's scream. The words "it's here" are commonly used when encountering a ghost. In other words, the girl who sought to test her courage believed she encountered Meso-san. As if she had forgotten the discretion from then she came, the noise of loud footsteps began to head far off in the distance. Did it. I did it.
The instant, the instant I completely exhausted my wild laughter, and the instant I believed my enemy had been repelled, I acted with lightning speed. I picked up Marie's body and flew out of there, because soon a crowd might rush into this bathroom. It wasn't just one person testing their courage. Perhaps by losing a game of rock, paper, scissors, she was made to come here as punishment. So if her companions hear it's here, they'll probably all rush in here at once. While holding Maria turned back at the stall, like holding at the seats after getting out of a late night taxi. I wanted to make sure I didn't forget anything. It's fine. Nothing. Бля, это... Даже я только что обратил внимание, это что, те самые толчки в полу или что? Киквейт. Бля... Это ж как на вокзалах этих. Ой. There should be no traces of any kind. Now, quick. This place won't be safe for long. Diving into the first empty classroom before the restrooms, hiding Marie's body in the shadow of a platform. It also tried to conceal my breathing. As I predicted, around 4 girls made an uproar while running through the halls. Should I suddenly reveal myself and go scold those girls for running through the halls? No, that kind of pointless act wasn't necessary. Staying here for now and hiding my breath is a much better plan. Finally, while arguing about whether the girl really saw it or not, those 4 bustling girls in their excitement began to turn back. For a little while after that I held my breath, and then I was sure the old school building had returned to complete silence. I finally breathed a sigh of relief. The area had already begun to get fairly dark. I had used an abandoned storehouse to temporarily store Marie's body, and after returning to the staff room I pretended to finish work as I waited for nightfall. Since in recent years the school implemented an automated security system where there was no night guard, and so if I waited until the middle of the night there'd be no one there. Speaking of the security system and the like, may have given the impression of rigorous surveillance with security cameras and whatnot, but it's nothing that extreme. There are just sensors placed all over the school's doors and windows, checking to make sure they're not broken into. Furthermore, they only work after the last person to leave turns them on. And so basically, if I waited long enough, it became my chance to be completely alone in the school. So, with the school completely empty and the darkness of the late night, I dragged Marie's body from the storehouse. I took her to an outhouse behind the prehab school building. This toilet was the very old, squatting kind, where the waste had to be pumped out from a gigantic septic tank buried underground. Бля. Я не знал, что у них такие есть, как бы депрессивно довольно. Я не знаю, почему я считаю это депрессивным на фоне происходящих событий, но тем не менее. Originally, the drainage system should have been changed, but at the same time this prefab was made, it seems they intended to quickly tear down the old school. But since it wasn't destroyed and was always being used, both flush toilets and squat toilets came to exist at the same time in this strange state of affairs.
Someone just comes to empty the septic tank sometimes, but it's not like they completely empty its contents, much less peek at the bottom. And so if I tossed her inside the septic tank, no one should notice.
Бля, скинули в толчок.
Oh, it might be found someday, but that might be in the future after the body has turned into a skeleton. Covered in a
Бля. Охуенный план. Надежный.
The covered in shit and eaten by maggots. What kind of trace could they find in was skeletal remains? The most they could think is that she accidentally fell in while playing.
Смерть в толчке. Бля. Не, ну это стрёмно выглядит. Что-то не смешно уже.
I uncovered the drainage pipe from the septic tank. For a moment I winced at the horrible hot stench. And then I shined a light on Marie's body with my flashlight and checked to make sure I didn't leave my suspicious marks. It looks alright. It's not as if she lost her shoes along the way and left them somewhere in the skull. Suddenly I noticed something that's a little out of place. There was her right sleeve button. The clothes Marie wore had decorative buttons on the sleeves. Looking at her right sleeve should have had one, but it wasn't there, and her arm lay bare. Maybe I dropped the button somewhere. No, maybe she didn't have one on today to begin with. Searching the school for a single button was impossible. Rather than worrying about that, I was aware that I had to immediately dispose of Marie's body, and I did so without hesitation. From within the deep and unusual large septic tank came an echo with a plop sound, and after that somewhat disagreeable sound. It too was replaced by the sound of the insect of the night and disappeared. I returned the drain's cover to the way it was before. It's fine. No one knows a thing. No one saw me. I thought as I walked briskly and returned to the staff room, if there was a teacher in the staff room who witnessed it, they'd come question me. And while this worst case scenario filled my mind, it was impossible. The staff room was filled with silence. And aside from the annoying sound of the tickling hands of the wall clock, there was nothing there. After all, I had already checked that all the teachers aside from myself had left the school before I went and disposed of Marie. That was the natural thing to do. There wasn't any need to laugh, but I wasn't exhilarated that the annoying cleanup job was all over and felt like fulfilling yet senseless love.
Я не знаю, он от стресса или он уже шизанулся, как бы это не очень понял пока.
But the case of my laughter wasn't just that alone. That's right. My quick thinking back in the bathroom, then that girl testing her nerve came and knocked. I thought it was over, but then, pretending to be that Mimeso-san I had heard about was being amazing.
Брух. Он еще... Не будет же он кем-то там притворяться.
That girl will probably spread the news to the people she meets every day starting tomorrow when she met Mimeso-san.
Он будет в толчке учеников пугать теперь. Что за пиздец-то? And then the school will certainly say that a yokai named Mimesa-san exists and a legend will be born. That meant basically I was Mimesa-san. That's right. Leaving no evidence, I accomplished murder and escaped unseen. That meant that I stood above humans in the hierarchical pyramid. In other words, I passed my test as a killer and now I have suppressed the so-called human stage. Бля. Ну, кстати, такая интерпретация, наверное, тоже имеет место. Она, конечно, такая... ну, не то, что зашкварная, но... нужно как бы... Ну, в английском есть такое выражение twisted mind. Вот это как раз конкретный случай этого. То есть для обычного человека это, конечно, странное такое размышление. Но я думаю, что, в принципе, в каком-то смысле руками стали оба, потому что одна через такое, как я уже сказал, не специальное, как бы, самопожертвование, а второй чисто через это, через какое-то, через испытание такое. Вот, ну, посмотрим, короче, кто там настоящий юкай. And what I earned was the name Mimesa-san. Yes, I have surpassed human beings. I have become a Mimesa-san, I have become a yokai. I'm beyond humans, I murder humans, and I'm feared by them. And even if I'm destroyed, the ghost story of Mimesa-san I will leave behind me. Will live on the stories spoken by the students in the school forever. That was as if I had even transcended my inescapable predestined human lifespan. I'm Mimesa-san. Students dread me, fear me, and transmit me with your stories. How superb! Mari, when you were alive, you sacrificed your body to relieve my boredom, and in the end, you are sacrificing your life to graduate me from humanity. Бля. Ну, ну, кстати, вот я думаю, что японцы примерно так и видят, как бы, вот эту их религию. Не помню, как называется. Синтоизм, по-моему, шинто же, да? Ну вот это такая интерпретация религиозных событий. Такая дохристианская интерпретация вот таких религиозных событий через, ну, не физические, но через реальные события. Там то, что они физические, это как бы, ну, такая себе формулировка будет. Ну, да, как-то так. Я уже устал смеяться. Ладно. Орыш волки. Так. Да ё-моё, не, парень, все. Ржать я за него уже не буду, все. Он как бы это... Не хочу как бы эмпатически с ним чувствовать, точнее, эмпатию с ним, как бы озвучивая его смех. Месо. If someone were there to hear it, they would have heard a sad wail as if someone's heart had been torn to pieces, and it could be heard coming from behind the outhouse where Mari's body had been disposed. Of course, it was a sorrowful cry because there was no one to hear it. No,
It was a voice that couldn't forgive that there was no one there. Marie's body was now in the wet of filth. Their light would never shine again. However, her soul had been released and set across the wet slate. What was it that made Marie sad now? Even Marie herself didn't know. It made her sad nonetheless. She had hoped she would have been given her life, only to have been given this sad fate. To be killed without having known anyone in the end. If her corpse tossed in this filthy place, no one would even know about her death. Nonetheless, the feeling the perpetrator felt in the end for her despite the many acts she had obediently followed. It wasn't even regret or even gratitude, but simply ridicule alone. Бля. Ну, я не думаю, что он... Ну, вообще, он на ней насмеялся, конечно, но не за то, что она осмелела, а за то, что она немножко неумная. Ну, как немножко? Немножко. All of these things tormented Marie. For her, eternity would continue her sorrow forever. Suddenly, the instincts were silent as if telling her someone had finally come. That was someone like she was now, whose existence wasn't human. And Marie, who existed no longer as a human, had already sensed that someone and raised her head. It was Higanbana. Before, her face didn't betray any emotions, but now she had an expression that fit the true meaning of the word emotionless. Whatever emotion it was, if one were to think it might have hurt Marie's feelings, to Marie Higanbana's cold emotionless expressionless form might have been the kindest. Marie might not have yet understood that this kindness to the dead might have been a non-human formality.
Рафлокоптера, конечно. My condolences. If you... Если б я к кому-нибудь так пришел чисто это... в танкере в этом, в помойном. Такое... Мои соболезнования, чего? If you think crying will heal your soul, feel free to cry. As long as you understand that voice cries can no longer reach anyone's ears, that is. I thought so, it's like that, isn't it? It would be strange to hear the voice of the ghost, wouldn't it? Higanbana's words might have been harsh, but for Marie, who didn't know the logic of spirits, those words might have been necessary, and perhaps it might have been a kindness to Marie. A cry is a sign that someone is looking for help, because until someone hears them, that person will continue crying, and for ghosts whose voices can reach no one without realizing it, they continue to cry eternally forever and forever, and when they are reduced to a spirit that cries only for crying's sake, they become seedy spirits who just want their cries to be heard by the living. And because she knew what it was like to be reduced to that sort of existence, for Higanbana, knowing she had to use strict words with Marie, she had to tell her no. Well, это сверху запятая, ладно. She had to tell her no, while she still had ears that could listen. Higanbana's son, with this I will be able to become a Meso-san, won't I? Higanbana, it's fine, Marie.
Ah, Higanbana, it's fine, Marie. And with that, Higanbana paused and stayed silent for a time. During that silence, Marie had a feeling something was wrong. If she was going to let her be a Mesa-san, then she should say so without hesitation, and yet she didn't say those words. Before you label me as a liar, please listen to me.
Блин, короче, тут еще походу будет битва за титул 8-го ранга школьного якая. Правда, я не очень понимаю, как она может проходить между умершим и живым, но хорошо.
It's true that I recommended you to be Mimasa-san. Everyone at the school class meeting gave their approval. They had only one condition. That condition wouldn't have been a problem at that time, but now that condition is stuck in place. The condition? What is it, Higanbana-san? Only one person is allowed to hope to become a Mesa-san, you see? Not understanding what Higanbana was talking about, Marie's mouth opened in surprise. But could that be what she was saying? That there was no way of changing her helpless situation? Her expressions began to feel the sadness. When the seat for the school yokai called me Mesa-san was recognized, the one who fit the positions was Marie alone. Because I went to there you were, I confirmed that you had the will. And since you had the will, and because you alone had the intent, at that time there was no problem for you to become a Mesa-san. Nevertheless, at the very last moment, a problem developed. What was the problem? A person assigned from you has appeared and hopes to become a Mesa-san. Huh? Because you were here crying with all your might, you didn't hear his voice, right? That man, with a wicked laughter in his low voice, even reached our class with that cry. There was a very ironic twist of fate, because, to tell you the truth, his voice might have been more intense than your sadness. You know, the man who killed you, that Kanamori, he went and declared he would become a Mesa-san. How did Sensei? Right after he killed you. To drive away students that arrived there, Kanamori effect being Mimasa-san, that turned out splendidly, but extremely pleased with himself. Being extremely pleased with himself, he believed himself Mimasa-san, so he just declared it with a yell, and thought such a wicked voice would reach your ears. But because you were busy crying, you didn't hear it, right? For a time, Marie was dumbfounded. She had been violated by that man while she was alive. And even after taking her alive, he sneered majestically down on her. And not only that, did he have to snatch away even her life after death? Even in death, can't she free herself from the man's control? It can't be. For a time, all Marie could do is hide her face as she continued to shed her tears of sorrow. There's no need to despair, Marie. There are just two candidates for Mimasa-san, you and Kanamori. It's already been decided. Mimasa-san will take the 8th rank among the school yokai, so now it can't be left empty. Either you or Kanamori, one of you, will certainly take that seat. Your odds are 50%, so it's a sure thing, right? How's it? And when will it be decided? A poll at the school meeting. We 7 can vote at the school meeting. We're an odd number, so it will shortly be decided. Because I'm attached to you, I intend to vote for you. But in our class, there are a lot of with wicked natures. It seems there are some among us who thinks an evil bastard like Kanamori will be suitable for number 8.
Indeed, they have a point. Oh no. Well, if I should lose that pole, what will happen to me? There's no place where as many ripe souls gather other than school. There is no other place in all Japan where as many evil spirits gather just to feast on leftovers of the souls. You probably can't perceive them yet, but even this area around this mammoth school is a well-known yokai gold mine. For someone like you, since they have no respect or control, those ill-natured guys wouldn't pass up an awful juice soul like yours. In an instant, they'd crush you and devour you until they're sucked out your bone marrow. Can you imagine it? And that school building's shadow were on the other side of the thicket. I've heard those bad ones, with quite an appetite, had formed groups. Mario was startled, and while she saw what Higanbana was saying, she didn't see anything slip out of the night's darkness. But even without seeing them, she was certain was wicked beings existed. You'll be alright for now. Your spirit is still being looked after by the one and only Higanbana on school premises. There isn't a fool who would dare attack someone from the school in the care of the school yokai from the 7 seats.
Короче, у нее квест, видимо, убить остальных якаев. Понял. Ну, кстати, интересно относительно.
Not to mention, I teach them what cruelty is. Higanbana giggled with an eerie expression that was neither flattering nor trustworthy. That should have greatly frightened Marie, but Marie couldn't see it. She was more frightened of the things appraising her that hid in the veil of darkness. Who is more appropriate for the title of Mimosa-san? You or Kanamori? Until that's decided, I'll guarantee your safety, but after that I can't guarantee it, can I? It's alright, even if you're eaten by those guys, or even if a Reaper comes along and your judgment is settled in hate. Hates at them. Какой хейт? Они что, наркоманы? Какой аид? Вы чего? Чё вы напереводили? Ну, короче, было, видимо, западло объяснять, куда там эти души попадают у японцев. Понял. Аид перекочевал в синтоизм. Either way will only last an instant. However, you might have wanted to exist along with your frail mind will be snatched away in an instant. Either way, see? Higanbana-san is only protecting my existence like this for now. Is that right? That's right. Although, after this, I don't know if that's safe to say. What is it? Higanbana with a cruel smile put her lips to Marie's ear, and as if to lick her earlobe, she spoke. There are many who think you look delicious. Not only just that crop out there, but I do too, because I think if you don't become the Mesa-san before they can sink their teeth into you, I think I'll eat you first myself. What she said couldn't have been just a joke. Respecting mutual rights of others was logic from the human world. In the world of non-humans, rank was everything, and everything was survival of the fittest, and if Higanbana wanted that, was worse, told her that she could now,
in this very moment make it into reality, thinking that there's nothing to be afraid of after death. That is human stupidity. Even after death, the world is still filled with things to be afraid of. And Marie, who has already once tried through the extremely cruel barrier of death, that reality where she could have lived without excessive cruelty, where she could have known no fear, never came. But Marie reigned in her fears and spoke in a gentle voice. If it comes to that, then if Higanbana-san's desires that, I think that would be alright. Have you already given up? That's not it. It would be ingratitude because Higanbana-san is protecting me. I'm allowed to exist as I am now, aren't I? Because Higanbana-san, who gave me time to cry for my own death, so I think I must be grateful for that. For Marie, Higanbana's reason for approaching her might have been even just to kill and eat her. Even so, the warm words they offered to welcome her among Higanbana's kind was worthy of gratitude. Even Kanamori, who demanded compensation in the form of immoral acts for protecting her from those bullies, had certainly never offered her to be his friend or companion. Even if Marie didn't put those emotions into words, Higanbana read them. Higanbana laughs, but Marie doesn't see her expression. If that happens, then your soul will be delicious. To be suitable Skuyoko, you'll need a bit more wickedness and cruelty, you know. That's alright, because I said I wanted to take my revenge as I am now. I'm capable of that kind of cruelty. And with that revenge, if you don't become a Mesa-san, you'll be in a tough spot, won't you? And even if you have your revenge, it might be just an inconvenience for that man, right? Marie once again began to cry. From that man's shadow, who she couldn't even escape from in death, feeling sadness, bitterness, and rage, all she could do was jumble her various emotions. Even her wail of agony reached no one, as it was swallowed by the well of darkness. Marie, Skuyoka's expectations and the like didn't matter one bit to the still living Kanamori, but even so, Kanamori hadn't yet completely cut all his connections to Marie's death. Talk about Moria not coming home last night quickly turned into an uproar. Was it an accident, or did she get involved in some trouble? The last anyone saw of the ever lonely and friendless Marie was at school that day. As for what happened after school wasn't anyone's guess. Police were looking for information and posting flyers with drawing of Marie wore that day in bulletin boards here and there, making sure not to overlook any witnesses. They posted them all around town. The police even came to question the homeroom teacher Kanamori. Kanamori said he didn't know what happened after school. The police departed feeling satisfied. It even became an urgent topic at the staff meeting, and as a precaution in case of second incident, there was a recent talk about after-school groups of bodyguards and the like. At first, those topics made Kanamori hurt race, but after a day or two he became confident. Because the police investigation hadn't found Marie's corpse, it was focused on what happened after school. He began to feel he had completely slipped away from that line of investigation. He was asked by a child from his class where Marie could have disappeared to, and Kanamori refused as if in jest and said, could it be the curse of Nemesa-san, I wonder? Of course not. Can't believe I just said that. Let me
Let's make this our little secret, okay? As expected, the students took what's worse all too well, having their having her treated as a victim of Mimesa-san, the school yokai everyone is crazy about lately came as an added bonus. In school, the rumors about Mimesa-san ran wild, and a new school ghost story began to take hold. With that in mind, Kanamori started to believe more and more that he was Mimesa-san. It was that kind of day. After school, on his way to the staff room, in the middle of the empty hallway, suddenly he fell. Then he fell. It was as if something had caught his elbow. It tore his skin and made him bleed. It wasn't a serious injury, but he pressed a tissue to his elbow so it wouldn't stain his shirt. Oh my, Kanamori-sensei, are you alright? Your heart, called out the vice principal who saw him by chance. Ah, how embarrassing. I must have bumped into something when I fell. I probably just slipped on a puddle. The student neglected to wipe or something. Kanamori said that, even though he knew more than anyone, he didn't lose his footing like that. While he smoothed things over with the vice principal, he looked at the hole and he was left doubting he could have slipped on something. Sensei, you seem to be bleeding quite a bit. It's seeping through your tissue. You're right. Oh no, perhaps I should head to the infirmary and get myself patched up. You do that. Oh, nurse. Kanamori-sensei seems to have hurt himself. Would you take a look at him? Conveniently from the other side of the hallway, the school nurse appeared. Ядрить чисто флекс. Я не понимаю это. Короче, ну ночки, конечно, интересно, ладно. Oh my, you're alright? Your elbow. The injury itself wasn't a big deal, but he didn't want the blood to stain his gloves. Kanamori thought as much, and he calmly headed to the school infirmary. The inside of the infirmary was filled with the smell of disinfectant, and feeling the pain from cotton wool soaked in that disinfectant brought back memories of my elementary school days. It was nostalgic. Before I knew there was something greater than being human, in those times I always felt looked down upon by those around me, not wanting to be looked upon. Ой, ладно, еще немножко перерыв. Я думаю, до 3 часов досидим. Пойду воды попью.
Ну я чаю сделал, короче, нормально. Before I knew there was something greater than being human in those times, I always felt looked down upon by... Так, я забыл музыку потише сделать, так. In those times, I always felt looked down upon by those around me, not wanting to look down upon and wanting to look down on the others. In those times, I bottled up my aggression against them, and by looking down on Marie, I finally felt as if I had relieved myself from that complex. I didn't think I wanted to be a killer, but if this purge didn't free me from my complex for the rest of my life, how long would I have to live in despair? If I thought about it, as for how long I could go on living. If I supposed Marie's life was ended for someone else's amusement, I thought it would be natural for them to go on living, seeking new ventures in life, like the different links in the food chain. I was the predator, Marie was the prey. That was all there was to it. If I didn't eat her, then in the future she'd be eaten by someone else. And so I ate her early on, and in a deeply compassionate way reset her existence. Although, even in her next life, she'll probably be eaten again. Но это, короче, вот это вот ауф-философия. Это такое... Именно такая быдляцкая версия какого-то ницшеанства там. Ну, конечно. Не, ну просто что смешного-то? Он как бы... Ну, шиз, конечно, но он же там что-то закончил. Какой-то университет там, и вроде... У него какая-то там позиция даже приличная. То есть, ну, он вроде не глупый, но... Ну, хотя... Вообще способности как бы... Не то, что мудрость какая-то, и такой интеллект в целом. Такой, ну... Не то, что... Как бы это сказать... Не универсальный в смысле интеллект, а такой, ну, в житейском плане, относящийся к вообще пониманию, насколько серьезны вещи, о которых ты размышляешь, насколько они реальны там и вообще имеют смысл и отношение к реальности. То, ну, способности к этому на самом деле мало отношения имеют. Поэтому вот, ну, он, конечно, способный, но, так скажем, далеко не гений тоже, но Мари вообще, типа, в этом плане, ну, совсем как бы плохо все у девочки. И это вряд ли как бы только из-за травмы, то есть, ну... That girl is just that hard to teach after all. While I was immersed in my fantasies, I had a somewhat large band-aid put on and ended my treatment. Then I mentioned my thanks and stood up to leave. Tink, 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 tink. A small series of sounds reached my ears. Something the matter? No, I heard something just now. If something fell over, Kanamori saw a small white thing had fallen on the floor and picked it up.
It was made of plastic or something and it looked like a small button. Even saying it was a button, it wasn't even a millimeter in diameter, but he understood it must have been an accessory for something. But then he turned his thoughts as to what it might have fallen from. He looked up above the medicine cabinets, and he understood what it was. That was something particularly out of the place in this infirmary, a Western doll. It couldn't hide its worn-out state from its degradation over time, but there was no doubt it certainly wasn't something cheap. I compared the shape of the object I had just picked up with the doll many times, and I sensed it was certainly a button from this doll's clothes. This doll's button probably fell off. Oh, is that so? I'll have to sew that back on after you leave. After all, because it's said that this child is the master of this infirmary. Master? This cute doll? Kanamori stood on his toes and took down the doll that sat atop the medicine cabinets looking down on them. That doll was uniquely Western and had a vaguely cold air to it. Kanamori had politely called doll cute, but in his mind he thought of how it wasn't cute but eerie. Yeah, but I've also heard about it from the former nurse, you see. She said the doll was here for long before she started working, and it had been watching over the infirmary just like it is now. Absurd. Isn't it something some student lost? Well, I wouldn't think there's a student who would bring such a splendid doll and simply forget it. That's right. They say this doll is a cursed doll, and the students are afraid of it, you see. So this is one of the school's 7 mysteries. Now that I think of it, the doll in my infirmary dances in the middle of the night, or so I've heard from one of the students. I see. So they're talking about this doll, eh? Long ago, a doll that belonged to a girl who died in this infirmary took her spirit and became a yokai or some such. No matter what school you go to, there are plenty of stories like that. Oh, that's right. I don't know who named that doll, but sure enough, it has a name. They say it's called Higanbana. Higanbana. It's not a particular furniture name, isn't it? Is it? Indeed, it just might suit the strange doll perfectly. However, isn't it wrong to be scaring the students by keeping that kind of doll there as decoration? Well, there's also talk of the curse spot on those who throw the doll away. It's not that I believe in curses, but since it's just watching over students in this infirmary for a long time, I'd feel kinda bad, you know? She sits there making sure the injuries of the students who come here don't get worse, and she protects them. Is that so? But where does this button go, I wonder? Here. I'll sew it on later. See, it's her right sleeve button. Right sleeve button. Those are casual words, but it was something Kanamura wanted to forget and yet could not. Bits and pieces from his disposed memory began to stir. Yes. A regret on that night he disposed of Marie's corpse. It was an uncomfortable feeling. Just before disposing of Marie's body, then shining a light on the body to make sure nothing was missing. He certainly saw Maria's right sleeve had been torn. That night his attention was invariably divided, so he didn't see how a single button mattered. He ignored it, but even so, it still left him with a bad feeling. That Mary revived in his mind with a yelp, as if a small rock had gotten inside his sock. This doll's torn off button, if it hadn't been the right sleeve, he wouldn't have noticed anything. Even so, it had to be the right sleeve's button. The same as the one torn from Marie's gloves, the right sleeve button. At that moment, Kanamori felt as if the eerie western doll named Higanbana was sneering at him. What a foolish man. There are only two things that can evaporate or disappear from this world. Know what they are? Huh? What are you talking about? The preconception that there was no way a doll could talk to me blurred with that question. The things that disappear, what are ungrateful souls? Just these two. She laughed at her own joke sarcastically, but the doll quickly froze her laughter and continued. Are you looking for Marie's right sleeve button? What is that button made of? Water? Grateful souls? There's no way a button could be made of water or souls. If it were to top quality, it might have been made from shells, or if it was cheap, then it would be plastic at best. Right. It's made of things that aren't water or souls. So there is no way it can disappear from this world. It can dissolve or evaporate, so it must still be where it was dropped, right? It'll be where it was dropped always, until it's found by someone. It'll be there forever, won't it? The meaning of his words began to pain me. It was an inconvenience that most people would have wanted to quickly forget, and until now I have forgotten it, that bad feeling I had about Marie's button. But no matter how I wanted to forget it, the button itself wouldn't disappear. It was surely there, even now, there it was dropped, and until until someone picks it up, it's waiting there even now. That's right. I mustn't forget about that button that came off the right sleeve. There was no way the button was torn off from the beginning. If she were a crude boy, she wouldn't care at all about a single button torn from her clothes. But she was a girl. If a button was torn off, she would have certainly put it back on again. Even Marie was the methodical type. She wouldn't go through daily routine with a button missing from her right sleeve. So that button must have been torn off that day. Kanamori-sensei, is something the matter? No. Thank you very much. I just remembered I have some business to take care of. Sorry now if you'll excuse me. Already the foundation for my mental state and sense of security were gone. If I can continue endlessly like this, sometimes someone will find that button, because the police have long known about the clothes Marie wore the day she disappeared. If by chance it winds up in their hands, they'll probably realize it belongs to Marie's clothing. What the hell am I doing so carefree in letting this critical situation go? And where did that button fall off? Very strangled her, that place, the old school building's bathroom, and that stone. No. And yet, then I left there, I was sure I didn't have any traces. I didn't leave any traces behind. But then I was in a hurry and only looked with a glance. I don't think I cared that much if a grand-like falling button escaped my sight. I'm sure of it. It's there. It's in there. In order to not be seen by anyone when I entered the old school building, and stay there until I could be completely satisfied, all I could do was hold back my impatient mind and wait. In the infirmary, the nurse was still finishing up the day's work. Then she felt as if she heard a girl's laugh there. Thinking there might still be students at the school, she turned around and then watched a doll quietly seated atop the medicine cabinets, caught her eye. Obviously there was no way Higanbana could laugh. She was a doll after all. The nurse might have been a little tired, she thought, after going home today. She would quickly get to bed. Which one is the better, Mimeso-san? That'll be a sign, won't it? Waiting until a void is boring. Don't you think it'd be better if the two involved decided it themselves? I must be tired. I think I'll call it a day and get out. Higanbana giggled as she imagined what was beginning to unfold from this point forward. Of course, it was impossible for that voice to reach the nurse's ears. Now then, Marie Kanamori, please show me who is more fitting, because everyone in our class are also hoping for something more interesting than a void. Are you staying here, Kanamori-sensei? Won't be long until tomorrow, you know. Thank you very much, Vice Principal. I'm almost done here, so please let me stay here a bit longer. I understand, but please start finishing up, because if you get too many overtime hours, we might even get a complaint from the union executive office. Well, I apologize, but I'm going to have to excuse myself for the day. Since I think you will be the last one out, please set up the security system. Also, if it's not on by 11 o'clock, if you don't call the security company, they'll come check on it. Be really careful, please. Yes, I'm aware of that. I had forgotten about that. Although I hadn't planned on taking that long to check that bathroom. But if I end up bumping heads with the security company, there'll be all kinds of trouble. Tonight Kanamori had been more discreet than ever before, even more discreet than the day he killed Marie. After seeing the vice principal cross the campus with his own eyes, heeding the vice principal's advice, he called the security company to let them know he'd be working late that night. This is perfect. Not this time as well. With no one else except myself in the school late at night, no one would pay him a visit. So he left the staff room, and before heading to the old school building, he hid himself and watched to see if anyone was lurking in the school. Naturally, no sound caught his attention. Only the cries of insects infested the old building. Then he allowed himself a breath. It sounded as loud as a storm in his ears. Outside the windows was pure darkness, because inside he had a light. Outside of the glass in the hallway wasn't darkness, but the interior of the hallway reflected itself back again like a mirror. So immediately after seeing that, he could see himself being reflected. Inside that massive school building, he was alone. In the day, the school bustles with many students and teachers. Doubtlessly it was forming its own society, but that world was a different world separate from this world. It might even be said that the school occupied a different dimension. In that dimension, now he was alone. Society is ordered to make by the many. And without numbers, then there's only one. It is a society no more. In all the wars, at this moment, on the separate school dimension, freed from the morals of so-called society, the world is alone. The world was his alone. If he ran in the halls during the day, he'd be scolded by his pupils. And if the vice principal saw him, he'd probably be made example of in front of the students, because no running in the halls is one of those rules in society. However, this school is in depth of night has now been set free from the society. In other words, the rules created by society can no longer reach him. After all, this is a world where he alone exists. And even if he ran ahead of full speed, there wasn't anyone to worry about. Even in this moment, he was the lord of this world. He had transcended this insignificant existence as a single man in a leisure society. The more he thought about it, the more his impatience about quickly finding Marie's button began to dissipate. Рассеиваться. Ну хорошо. He began to feel surprised at how frustrated and impatient he was moments ago. If he had horns, if he had wings, no more than ever he lengthened and grew them, unfolded and extended them. It had started as a law only in his mind, but then he realized even if that law escaped his mouth in this world, no one else could hear him. Hear it, and so Kanamori, in an insanely weak voice from the depths of his soul, howled with laughter as he headed to the former school building. However, the moment he stepped foot into the old school building, his demonic confidence retreated. It was replaced with a discretion, as if his ruthlessness had frozen in ice. It even froze his inner demon. If he turned the lights on in the old school building, he might be seen by someone in the neighborhood, and so without turning on the lights, he illuminated his path with the thin glow of a flashlight. Frail light illuminated the world of pure darkness, but like an illusion, the length of that hallway seemed to continue all the way into the horizon, and from the inside all the doors had been closed and locked with the utmost care. And with this he had completely severed himself from the world. He was torn and isolated from that school world. In other words, he was in a secondary world divided, far away from the human world.
Бля.
Да мы поняли уже как-то. Можно нам не рассказывать уже еще 5 минут, что он попал в другое измерение. Душка началась какая-то. Слава богу, что пока еще флешбеков не было. If you've gone this far from the human world, you'll get closer to the spirit world, won't you? Ой. Ну мы дошли до первого эффекта. Хорошо. He felt as if he heard the voice of the doll, whose button fell on the infirmary again. Of course, there was no way the doll could talk, so it was impossible for something that foolish to really happen. And yet this world of the former school building and the human world, their dolls couldn't speak. They're two vastly different spaces. Maybe here in this old school lies a world where even dolls can talk? That's absurd. He had wanted to laugh, and after he dared let it pass his mouth, he felt as if the power he had earlier had been cast aside like a lie. It was something ingrained in his mind since childhood. He remembered unfounded rumors regarding the strange world of the school at night, and now they began to slowly work their effects on his mind. He wanted to say how absurd it was again. This time, as he tried to say the words, they either caught like a lump in his throat. He thought saying them might cause him to remember that emotion, horror. So he swallowed to buck them down. Because the former school building was getting quieter and quieter, his desires to deny that emotion amplified more and more. There might have been a leak in the water pipe somewhere. That strange sound he had noticed during the day filled the bathroom. He had wanted to run and turn on his lights inside, but he held back his desperation, and he illuminated the area with the thin beam of his flashlight. Perhaps that stall door where I killed Marie still shut. That place where Marie's sobbing Mesa came from. In the world of in the daytime, this might have been a lovable cheap ghost story, but in this world, with about as much likelihood as a coin landing on tails, it held the chance of that horror becoming reality. Even though all he had to do was shine his lights on that bathroom stall, he hesitated. Damn it. The hell am I afraid of? Marie's ghost isn't something to be afraid of. Короче, прочитаем про эту, господи, пуговицу и закончим. Потому что, душка началась. Marie's ghost isn't something to be afraid of. It's that falling button. The police might find that's important. Oh, stop it. The senseless grin, he tried to boost his morale as he shined his flashlight towards that stall. It was like he thought it would be. The stall hadn't been closed or anything. Actually, there wasn't anyone inside, and there wasn't any crying voices sobbing meso. So that's it. He thought while shaking it in sight and relief, but in doing so, the fears he had restrained him seemed as if they were about to resurface once again. He resisted. In any case, he set out to examine the bathroom stall. In the stall was a Japanese-style squat toilet. The moment he saw it, his hair stood on, and as he felt the memories of that day resurfaced in his mind. Once the stall was an immoral place where I performed countless atrocities with Marie. Even though I remember those days, those long days when I committed those indiscretions, they were all completely blotted out by my memory of that sole act that day when I killed Marie, because the Marie that revived in my mind wasn't the one that stimulated me. It was then she carelessly tumbled on the ground, unaware of her indecency after I strangled her. When I remembered her body, I felt just a slight sense of regret from the bottom of my heart, but I quickly disposed of it. For if I allowed myself to entertain such thoughts, I thought all I was doing was acknowledging my own weakness. Take my daily meals, for instance. If I came to regret every single animal or plant I have eaten before, I wouldn't even be able to eat a slice of bread, and that's my attitude towards Marie. We're firmly placed in different levels of the hierarchy, and I'm placed in a higher position than Marie on the pyramid. That's all there was to it. Those things haven't ended up as they should, and I don't need to regret anything, just like there are no humans who shed tears of sadness from eating bread. Such stupid thoughts. Anyway, I have to see if that button is here. I felt as if I didn't scold myself, I would be sucked more and more into delusions. Already it seemed like the air of this different dimension and the old skull started to eat away at me. I had to quickly pull myself out of the strange world, or else I wouldn't be able to return from it. The sixth sense that had molded since childhood warned me so. I must hurry. I must hurry, but I had to relentlessly and carefully search. I didn't care if it was a toilet stall. I crawled down on all fours and searched as if I were licking the floor. On top of that urine color stained floor that eternally released its full odor. Bля, мразотно, конечно. I couldn't find the button that fell off Marie. Under no... Бля, он ползал по полу в общем толчке, как на каком-нибудь вокзале старом. Здоровый... Ой, мать. Under no normal circumstances, I might have thought that meant it wasn't here. But somehow I was convinced. I had no proof, but I had no doubt the button was here. It has to be here. It's not on the floor? Did I miss a spot? Warmth strangled Marie to death. The stall door was closed. Now the door was open, so I could crawl around the stall. Maybe there's something on the inside of the door, or possibly the outside, and though I thought there was no way the button could be in such a place, I thought that if I didn't recreate the same stall from that day, I wouldn't be able to free myself from my delusions. Но он же в парашу не полезет. Пожалуйста. So I carried out the first task in recreating it. I shut the door from the inside, because it would naturally swing open if it wasn't locked. I locked the stall door. I caught a quick glimpse of the opposite side of the shut door, but the button hadn't stuck to it or anything like that. And then there's the button. Marie died here. She was killed here. And it was here that she fell, and it was then that the button was torn off. I hadn't seen it, but somehow I knew. It must have been then. Then the flashlight's beam reflected with a flash, covering the top of the toilet paper. It was a silver-colored dispenser. From its rough use by students, it had been squashed somewhat, but it seemed like it could still fulfill the role in conveniently cutting large sheets of toilet paper, and above that paper dispenser there was a pebble that looked like a wet teardrop. It's here. This is it. I slowly took it between my thumb and forefinger. There was no mistake. This is it. It's that button. It was the very button that had been torn from Marie's right sleeve. That day Marie had the life squeezed out of her, and then she was exhausted. Those hands of hers that fought against my choking arms robbed with a thump. Then that button somehow caught and tore off on the paper dispenser. That's how the button got here. I found it. I desperately resisted the urge to hold it below her. I could think about this button as long as I wanted later. There's no need to overthink this. All I need to do is just drop it in the toilet and flush it like so. As the water flushed the world of silence that had come to greatly haunt me, was torn apart by its roaring sound, and in an instant it swallowed up the button, and its form had forever disappeared from the world above. Just as that doll said, because that button can't disappear, it'll probably remain in this world. But no one could find something like a tiny button that fell into the sewer. That would be harder than finding a bead in the desert. And so this was the same as sending it into the eternal abyss. Basically, this perfectly erases any traces of the murder I committed. I felt the unease from that day that remained in my mind slowly clear away. And the roaring, flushing sound that had torn the silence began to slowly quiet down. I began to rise to where I was once before. I once again began to take back my place as a being that suppressed humans. Now when holding back laughter was painful, I felt like I was going to burst out laughing right there. No, shouldn't I laugh? This is a world separate from the human world, and so I am alone. Isn't this world mine alone? So I didn't hold back. My laughter cut through the silence, and once again I exposed my existence as more than human. It was the greatest feeling. Until now I had never laughed with such joy once in all my life. And after I laughed into my heart's content, after I had laughed so much, I was in pain from the lack of oxygen. I needed to breathe. I set out to leave the bathroom stall. I went to unlatch the lock. At that moment, my finger that touched the lock repelled as if it had been struck by static electricity. No, that's not the right way to put it. It wasn't as if my finger had been hit by static electricity. It felt as if then touching it was better to say I had been struck with static electricity, because from the other side of the door I heard the voice of a girl sobbing meso meso. All the hairs of my body stood on and I felt a huge presence pass through me from her head to toe. And so I stopped breathing as if I were checking if that meso was an auditory illusion. Ладно, закончим на этом, наверное. Ну, что я могу сказать? Ну можно еще это почитать пока. Месо is the sound of someone sobbing, usually after losing their self-respect from having low self-esteem. Often they had hangs limply as the person cries. In Higanbana no saku, yoru meso is given the Japanese honorific suffix san, meso san, which is often comparable to the English Mr. or Mrs. or others include Chinese childish suffix rather mischievous or malicious yokai are supernatural demons, ghosts, and monsters from Japanese folklore and horror stories. The term yokai covers a wide range of beings from disguised as beautiful women to colossal centipedes. The most common yokais are Tengu, long-nosed demons, Oni, ogres, Kappa, humanoid turtles, Kitsune, fox spirits. Although some yokai can be beneficial, like rain spirits, generally they exist to cause humans misery, either through the trickery or fear. The Seven Mysteries is a Japanese concept birthed from the importance of number 7, 7 days in a week, 7 wonders in the world, 7 deadly sins. This concept became popular in the Edo period of Japanese history, with tales of unexplained phenomena that turned into urban legends. These tales usually took place in the singular around comprised of some phenomenon, mysteries of Silver Shrine. This trend became popular in Japanese school and 7 school mistress is a popular concept that has been explored in TV dramas, anime. Понял. Ну я, короче, что могу сказать? Ну, мы пока только 3 персонажей на самом деле видели, полноценных. Может, Хиганбана, кстати, начнет помогать и этому Канамори. Потому что, ну, паров лучист, так сказать. Типа, ну, сейчас мы остановились на том, где они, короче, в эту ночную... Ну, не мир, конечно, но такое... Ну, вообще, да, это отдельный мир, можно сказать. Короче, перенеслись в другое измерение этих якаев, но... Я не знаю, вот это вот размышления этого Канамори, как бы вот эти ауфные, такого быдлячего, как бы, быдлячей интерпретации, там, не знаю, Ницше, что ли, про иерархию, там, про овцу, тигра, добычу и хищника. Это, конечно, кринж. Ну, Рюкиши, как обычно, это... Что там? Воды налил. Конечно, как он 10 минут шел до этого толчка, это... Но это на самом деле не так плохо. Диалогов пока мало, конечно, но посмотрим, короче, что будет. Если не будет там флешбеков, там каких-нибудь, которые будут полностью повторять события прошлое, там еще чего-нибудь, то оно, в принципе, будет неплохо. Но, конечно, немножко графомании присутствует. Ну ладно, посмотрим дальше. Ладно, всем спасибо, кто смотрел там или будет в записи смотреть. Напишу там, как продолжим потом.